Hello and welcome to the podcast, We Are Selling. Today we're going to do a deep dive into the top 10 challenges that agents have with their listing conversation, their listing presentation, whatever you would like to call it. And joining us now is the National Head of Training for McGrath. Please welcome Mr. Danny Grant.
G'day Lee, how you doing?
Mate, very well. Good to see you in 2024. And we continue on with one of the most important topics in real estate.
Oh yes, love this topic of listing presentations. That I think people can't get enough of it. It's still remains, I guess, one of the biggest mysteries and weaknesses amongst agents in the country.
Now, Danny, before we get into our top 10 key challenges of the agent, there's another piece of the puzzle right before we can hit the top 10, and it's called the greeting. Take us into the greeting.
It's something that can impact your whole presentation. So we look at the whole listing presentation and all the things that we can do within it, and we focus on that, and we forget how important the first impression is. So this is the thing, it's such a big thing. So when someone opens the door, they take about 10 seconds to make an initial impression of you. So how do you look? What's that first sort of energy level when you open the door? So for instance, if you've got way too much energy and they're an older couple, they're not kind of ready for that sort of relationship just yet, hasn't been a good first impression. Then what happens is they take another 25 seconds to validate that original impression. So, I didn't really like you on that first sort of look. And then they're going to think of things like your tone of voice, what you're wearing, how you smell. Have you got too much makeup on? Have you got not enough makeup on? Are you not wearing socks? Whatever it is that's kind of not working for them. Or maybe you smell of smoke, maybe been a little bit late. So that's that first 25 seconds. And then they take a further 4 minutes in total to sum up what they think of you. So when you think of it like that, you think, okay, don't try too hard on that first impression. Don't go on too much. How do I make that good for, that first 5 minutes a good one? And sometimes that's just having a chat one-on-one, not coming on too strong. So I mention that first because you've got to really think about that first impression. So let's not get there late. Let's get there on time. Let's match our energy to the tone of voice that we had with them over the phone. Let's look at what we're wearing and think about our market. Let's not think about, I just want to be really fashionable. That's really important because we certainly have some agents that will present for 40 minutes to an hour, and it could be a fabulous presentation, but they lost the client in the first 4 minutes.
Well, Danny, that was a great understanding and executive summary of the greeting, and I agree with you. That energy match and mirroring, you don't know what you don't know. You may be thinking, I need to come across as pumped and excited, and you may be walking into a deceased estate. So you don't know what you don't know. So play it calm, play it professional, and we are professionals. What you wear is so important, and it's only my opinion, but I feel this has slipped over the years, Danny. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, it has, because that first impression, what's people's expectations? I think sometimes, we look on social media and Instagram and what other agents are wearing, and maybe we sort of idolize an agent that works in a very hip neighborhood that suits his target market, or her target market. But then you might work in a family or a very professional area, and that just doesn't really match. So you kind of got to drop what you think other people or your peers think you should be dressing, and just think about who's your tribe, who's your target market.
Yeah, who you're serving. And remember, you might think all these things about yourself as a real estate person, but you're going to work. And you're going to work for someone and protect their asset and really look after that family, that person. It's about them. And I think that's also slipped in our industry.
Yeah. I'll give you a good example, Lee. Like if you're like me, you always have trades in your house and doing some sort of renovation. Whenever you get a tradesperson, let's just say it's an electrician, and they turn up and they've got a polo shirt with their logo on it, they're really well presented to come and do a quote, as opposed to a tradesman that's just come off a job and he's sweaty, and like that impression is those guys are professional. And that's not from their work. I haven't made that assumption. It's just from how they look.
Yeah, this happened to me the other day. I rang a smoke alarm company, all because they'd advertised in a magazine. And I made a decision that if you think advertising in a community magazine to the community is important, I'm prepared to hire you.
Yeah. 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 And that goes down to what's your local presence as well? Are you invested into the area?
Well, Danny, let's get started. We're going into this listing presentation now. We're past the greeting. What is number one?
Okay, so number one, this is the biggest one that I find, well, certainly across McGrath, this is always number one, and that is no structure or agenda. So we go in there, we fly by the seat of our pants, or maybe we go in with the best of intentions with an agenda, but the client, you get chatting, you have that initial chat, and you don't know where the presentation starts. And suddenly they're asking you about fees and what you think it's worth and things like that. And the easiest way to get yourself into a structure is someone says, okay, so what do you think it's worth, Danny? Best way that I find is to say, well, look, before we start, I've prepared a bit of an agenda, and this is what I want to run through today to make sure that we maximize our time together and we cover off everything. And number one is X. And then number three is fees. So I know that's important to you, so we'll make sure we cover that off. Suddenly they know what they're getting. And when you list an agenda down from 1 to 10 or 5 or 7 or whatever it may be, they can see that fees is coming. They can see that pricing the home is coming, all the important things that they want. And by the way, Lee, was there anything else that you were hoping to discuss today? Was there something that was sort of most important to you for me to discuss? Oh yeah, marketing. Okay, what about the marketing, Lee? Well, I work in social media, so I really want to kind of know what your strategy is around that. For most people, they might panic about that, that, geez, I don't have a social media strategy. So you've got to structure it in a way that it has a beginning and an end. And when I teach this, I think that the hardest thing that agents find is that they're walking in and it's performance anxiety because I've got to perform because I've got to win this, right? It's all up to me on this. And when they learn it, they're sort of learning it in one go and it's too hard. You've got to kind of section it off. So agenda one, or your first section in your listing presentation, it's like you're learning lines, for a movie. First section is I do the tour, I ask my pre-qualifying questions, I go through my agenda, and then we talk about the presentation of the house. Stage two is I'm starting to talk about my team and my unique selling propositions, and how my team is actually going to work for them. Stage three is we go through pricing structure and what my strategy is. Stage four is I go through marketing. Stage five is we start to go into a close. So when you've got those chunks in your mind, it's much easier to have a structure in your listing presentation.
Danny, this is an important one to me because I'm a structural trainer. And a lot of people resist structure, but that's because they may not understand the reason for structures. Structures are required of when you can't think, you can't perform, you haven't had the greatest day, something horrific's happened, and you need to flip the switch and lock into the grid versus I just can't do this today. I know myself, and Danny, you would know this, being a public speaker 3-4 days a week, you're not allowed a down day. So when you take the stage and something within the family or something's going on that has rocked your world, you'd want to hope you've got a plan B backup structure that I can just perform the work. And that's why structures are important. It's about the consistency it brings to you as a professional. Yeah, a lot of people will spruik, no, I'm not like that. I just work off, I just how I feel and the groove. Well, that's the most inconsistent, unprofessional thing you could do because now you're relying on energy all the time. And when you don't feel good, it's not sustainable. You are now an amateur. So structures is not about being cool. It's about being professional.
And also not about being robotic. I think a lot of people go, oh, no, I don't want to be that structure. I can't relate to the client. It doesn't mean that. You just know what happens in each section of your structure. You're going to tailor it to the client and the energy, and you're not going to say the same things 100% all of the time, like speakingly, like there's different things that we'll bring into presentations depending on the room and where we are. But you've got to have some sort of structure in your mind that the client at the end of it is going to go, that was professional. You covered off everything, because you don't want to walk out of there thinking, I didn't cover off marketing properly. I didn't cover off this. I didn't give the best to myself. And that is exactly what happens when you haven't got structure.
Couldn't agree more. And just for our listener, when we talk about the consumer weighing us up, and I've seen this in my own career when presenting to people above me in life, meaning they've had more life experiences, they've run big companies, or they've just done very well at what they've done. And that could be they're a printer, a bricklayer, a plumber, but they're professional in their own path. They actually have a view, first up, which is stereotypical, that real estate agents aren't structured. They're not good business people, and they don't have a great name in the community. And if we change this word structure to the word sequence, which was a big word in the last 12 months on this program, do you have a listing sequence that flows, you can follow, they can understand, and they know where you're up to? Whereas when you're all over the shop, bouncing off the walls, hopping in the car thinking, oh, I didn't mention staged marketing, it's just an amateur moment, and that's all it comes up to, which is going to bring us to number 2. Danny, what is number 2?
Don't ask good qualifying questions. So this is the consultative approach. So the importance of qualifying questions, and you've got to do it up front, is that it's going to give you a lot of clues and a lot of signals along the way, and they're going to help guide you on what sort of presentation that you're going to have, or the things that you're going to focus on. So for instance, I've done the tour of the home, I'm sitting down with a client, then I can say to you, Lee, so why now for you? You know, what's bringing this move? And we start to get into their lives a little bit, you know, and why they want to move. Oh, okay, so Lee, have you actually sold before? Oh, yeah, we have. How did that go? Yeah, it was okay. How would you rate that experience out of 10? Oh, it was probably about a 6. Okay, so how would I make this a 10 out of 10 for you this time around, Lee? Right, so that's going to open up a whole heap of clues, right? So maybe we went auction and we failed. Okay, how would you feel about doing auction this time? Well, look, okay, but I'd want a better structure. Maybe they mentioned communication and things like that, and then we go, great, I can emphasize my communication. So they're telling you what sort of agent they want, essentially, in that scenario. Then you can ask questions like, look, what's your favorite room for the family to congregate in? What do you love? Oh, we love this living area. We love, you know, at the end of the day that everybody sits around the kitchen bench, etc. And so, look, that's really important, because when I've got a buyer coming through for a second or a third viewing, I'll just bring them in this space and I'll actually explain how you guys love living in here. So those little clues help, and that's also a really important one, because you're asking questions about them, right? I'm not talking about, you know, is it important to you that you've got the number one agent in the area or things like that. I'm talking about you and your house. So you're really starting and what sort of agent that you want. So that's that consultative approach, you know, where you're listening, you're asking questions, you're not making statements about how good you are, because we don't get answers when we get statements. We ask questions, we get answers, and that opens up a clearer pathway for us on a good presentation.
So powerful, and a big theme of the last 12 months on this podcast: questions get answers, statements get judged. And when you ask those questions, it forms part of your discovery stage. And discovery is such a powerful part of connection. And I loved when Matt Steinwade was on the program and he said, never deliver content until you've got a connection. And that's always stuck by me, that one. And, you know, you mentioned about your favourite room, or just suppose you've sold the house, you've moved on to your next property. What will you miss most about this one? And I think number 3 links into this beautifully. But number 2, the questioning, you know, do you have 10 great questions? I know at the Complete Salesperson course, we give you 24 questions. You don't need 24, but pick the ones that you feel you're going to best communicate with. Danny, what's number 3?
Number 3 is don't discuss property presentation. Now, it might seem like kind of a minor thing, but I think it's something that sort of was a lot around our industry and has been dropped a little bit. And that might be shortage of stock, urgency to get things on the market. The market's been great, so we don't have to really focus on presentation. But and also, I think people don't mention presentation and what they should be doing because they're worried that the client may not pick them. Like, I'll just get it on the market, it's easy. But I certainly used to win a lot of listings because I would talk about presentation and maximising the end result. So you've got to, I think the best way to lead into this, if you're worried about the client may not want to do any work to the house, is ask them over the phone. Is there anything that you need to do to get the home ready before you put it on the market? Now, if they start saying, yeah, I thought about getting it painted and doing house wash and maybe a bit of garden work, but I'd like to get your opinion on that, Danny. I know that I can start saying, yes, you should do this, 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 and this, because they're open to it. Whereas if they answer that by saying, oh, well, look, I spoke to a couple of friends and they said, I don't do anything because people can see through that, right? So I know that, okay, I've got to ease into that conversation a little bit better. And that is that, look, to maximize the price, I've just got to give you some advice on some of the things. You don't have to do them. But I think if we don't do them, we have to look at it is going to impact the end result. So I have to let you know about that. That's a very different approach of saying, well, look, I'm not making you do it. But if you don't do it, there is going to be a consequence that I need to let you know about. So whereas opposed to if they were very open to it, then I'd go straight into it. But you may lose a listing because someone like me has walked in there and told them that they can maximize the result, and they'll go, geez, Lee didn't even talk about the presentation. So does he care, or does he really care about maximizing the results? So it's important that you don't skip over that point, or at least have a discussion about it.
What is number 4 in the errors or challenges that people have in the listing conversation?
Yeah, don't understand personality types. So this is a tricky one, because there's a bit of science around this and a bit of study around this in terms of the different personality types, and I'll let you know what they are. There's different names that you can kind of put on these when you research them, but basically there's 4. There's the analytical person. So the analytical person, when you're presenting to them, or I'd call them the wise owl. So they like graphs. They ask a lot of questions. They're very neat, very emotionless, right? So we present to a lot of people like that. Maybe they've got their arms folded. Then you've got your driver, who just wants you to get to the point, right? Let's just get to the point quickly. Typically can be tradespeople as well. Sometimes, as I just get through this. Then you've got your amiable, which they're very soft. They're, they wear bright coloured clothing. You can't close those people too quickly. They like a bit of a chat. Then you've got your expressive, right? They're just happy to be there. They've got a lot of energy. They're overzealous and they can take you off topic really quickly. So you've got to kind of lift yourself up to match that overzealous approach that they've got. But here's the thing. Agents are mostly one of those 4. Okay, so sometimes I hear people go, yeah, but I kind of list, most people that are amiable. That's the type of client that I get. And then I say to them, yeah, what's your days on market? Oh, it's about 120, right? It's because you're too amiable, right? You need to move into that zone of being a driver to close these people and move them on. Now, a personality that's like a driver typically can be a top agent, churns over a lot of properties, and can come off a little bit arrogant, to an amiable person. That there's only one way to sell real estate and it's my way to sell real estate, right? So if you're an amiable presenter or you fear that you're a little bit like that this is just my way of selling real estate, then you need to ask questions about their house and get a little bit chatty with people. If you're somebody that is expressive, just excited to be there, I've got 1,000 buyers on my database and it's all fantastic, you're going to have somebody that's analytical look at you and go, yeah, I don't believe it. Where's your graph? Show me the list of buyers, right? So great having energy, but you got to sort of think about, if I've got an amiable person, an analytical person opposite me, then I need to have some evidence-based information. So if you have your mindset around those 4 types of people and construct a presentation that appeals to all of them. Now, it's not easy, but you will list more properties without a doubt.
Danny, that was so well explained, and for a lot of our listeners, they may not have given consideration that there's the 4 types of people, and also how you need to remain calm and be yourself, no matter which personality you're dealing with, but modifying your approach to have that sync and connection. And I think some of the best agents are quite calm, but not rattled, and stick to the game plan of what they're presenting. Because at the end of the day, along with those personality types, is sometimes the agent flips and flops to think that's going to be the best way to connect, and they don't connect because they're an imposter. Which brings us to the next challenge of number 5. And number 5 is agents not understanding the power of pausing, and they don't pause.
Yeah, and look, what's the reason that we pause? There's a few reasons for it. Number one reason is it allows the client time to just process what you said. So if you're just going from end to end to end to end with different statements, they've got no time to process it. The other thing is that if you pause in the right spots, and like you might say something like, look, property videos, Mr. Rivino, I was going to show you a video now. This is so important to your campaign. It brings emphasis to what you've just said, that's an important topic. Now, the other part of that is your tone. So, you can, suddenly change the tone of your voice that, look, this is something that some people don't do. You're drawing them in. Or I'm so excited about how well our social media strategy is working. Your energy levels change. Because sometimes you can put them to sleep if you're just at one tone. So your energy levels, you've got to kind of look at that in the different spots, because I'll get excited when you get excited. The other is when you pause, Lee, it stops filler words. So the arms and the R's that we think that we need to kind of fill in the spaces. And I love that saying, music is defined by the space between the notes. Therefore, the space between the notes, music notes, is just as important as the note, right? So if we didn't have spaces between music, well, it wouldn't sound too good. So it's the same as when we're speaking. You've got to have breaks where you pause.
Danny, airtime is so important, isn't it? Where, you're going into this, you do a very powerful message or close, and then suddenly they need to take that in. And pausing just allows that airtime and the response time. Too many agents jump in with, yep, I know the answer, yep. And that doesn't allow them to get to number 6, which is understanding those little trial closes. So a challenge that we've got for number 6 is people don't have any trial closes, no trial closes.
Yeah, and when you haven't done that, it makes it very hard to close at the end. I think that's the biggest reason that some people don't close or feel awkward closing, because they haven't given themselves those little visual clues, and it comes off way too harsh when you're closing at the end. Oh, hang on, we're not ready for this. You haven't tested whether you could close. And the trial closes are gentle qualifying closes, if you like, and it's just, you're judging, are they going to work with me or not? How do they feel about working with me? So look, Lee, can I just ask you, what do you think is the very best room in the house that we should be photographing? Like, oh, well, look, the kitchen living area, we love how it sort of looks out to the deck. When do you think it looks its best? What time of day? Is it sort of around, middle of the day, the sunshine coming in? Yeah, probably between 12 and 1. So if I booked photos, tentatively for the next, in 2 weeks' time, would you be ready for that? Yeah, no, I think we'd be ready for that, Danny. Okay, and, you could talk about open house times. When's it looking its best open house time-wise? Look, I've got a couple of slots, in those time frames. Would it be okay if I tentatively book that for you? Have you got a solicitor or conveyancer that you're working with? So little things along the way, and it's almost like, Lee, it's not an arrogance, but it's an assumption that we're going to be working together. It's okay for me to ask these questions.
Number 7, don't explain the marketing enough. And again, to our listener, these are the errors, the challenges. So as agents, we don't explain the marketing clear enough. And Danny, my thoughts on this one. I love staged marketing. What's your insights?
Yeah, and look, stage marketing is part of it, whether you've got a VIP launch or different things. You've got to mention all these things. I think not explaining marketing clear enough, what we mean by that is that, some agents get into the habit of, this is my budget, this is what I use for everybody else, and all the other agents are using the same sort of things, professional photography, etc. So I don't really need to explain it. But the client probably hasn't sold for 7 years or 10 years or 20 years or ever. So they don't necessarily know it all. And if you're not explaining it clear enough and your competitors aren't either, well, they'll probably just go with the cheapest budget, wouldn't they? So you've got to explain that there is differences in there and what the importance is of those different elements. So social media, for instance, if you like our number 1 agent, Alex Jordan, he has over 3,000 spend on his social media, where competitors might be charging $200, $300, maybe $500. Like, that's a big chunk of the marketing budget. He needs to explain that and why it's important. And you've got to get excited about the marketing, because, selling is a transference of feeling. If you believe in it and what's in your budget, people will buy it as well. But you can't also dovetail them into one budget. I think it's human nature to want a choice. So triplicate of choice, I learnt that from you, Lee, and it's always worked. And even though I always want them to pick the middle campaign, sometimes I'll pick the top campaign. But, your entry budget, your middle budget, your high budget, gold, silver, bronze, whatever you want to call it, you're still giving them a choice, right? But generally it's human nature to pick the middle one, and that's the one that you kind of want to tailor them to, but they need to feel like they've got a choice. But you've got to understand the different elements, and you also need to understand that there are people that get social media now. So it's not good enough to go in and not understand these things. You need to be able to explain to them what's going to deliver a result. And I think you've got to have evidence-based things in there with you. Here's a campaign that I've run before, and these are the results of it. That's what a client expects because, they're spending a lot of money on this marketing.
And this connects perfectly to our challenge, or what we don't understand in number 8 is, and we're talking about, a national level of research here from both of us, Danny, who've done the advanced listing workshops for years. And number 8 is agents don't articulate the USPs, which is the unique selling propositions, or leave hooks. Take us into this.
Yes. So firstly, let's talk about unique selling propositions. Your company's got them. You've got them yourself. And I think sometimes people look at USPs going, it's a bit tacky. It's the same as what every company's got. But there's going to be some unique things that you offer. Now, USPs are things that are going to add value to their campaign. So it might be that, like in McGrath, we're the most followed brand on social media. So what does that mean to the client, right? So we can drive more traffic to you. That's going to get more people through the campaign. The more people that come through the campaign, the more people competing at auction day, the more people emotionally attached competing at auction day, the higher the price. So mentioning what are the USPs that are of benefit to them, not of benefit to you, that, I love working here. And then what your unique ones are to yourself. And that's what we mean by hooks. So Lee, I'll give an example. So I'll go into McGrath offices and I might sit down and see 5 or 6 agents present to me in a day, right? Hard yakka. But I get to the end of the day and speak to the principal and he says, what did you think of Dave? What did you think of Jill? And I'll go, what was Jill again? And the reason is because there was no hooks. There was nothing to remember them by, right? But he goes, what was Tony like? And I go, I remember Tony because Tony actually did a demonstration of how he negotiates to me, right? Because that was a hook, right? Because none of the agents showed me how they negotiated in the listing. Jenny was great because she kind of went through how she works with buyers, and she kind of went through this little off-market scenario that she did with buyers. So I remember that. So what is it that you do that is a big hook that you get excited about, that they really remember? And one of the biggest hooks, and I mentioned it, is negotiating in a listing presentation, because I can say more than 90% of agents don't do it, don't show how they negotiate, because they're not practiced enough at it. They're too scared to show it. But if you just do that, it's a massive hook.
Danny, number 9 comes under really the same area, doesn't it? Because number 9 is can't overcome objections. That is another big challenge that people get so rattled by. Yeah. What's your view on overcoming objections and getting that right signal when the objection comes in?
Yeah. Okay. Well, the first thing is to separate whether it's a question or an objection. So sometimes we think that when someone says, will you drop your fee, that's an objection to your fee, right? It's not. It's just a question. It's okay to say no. And why? So we need to look at it like that. The other way we need to look at it is okay for them to have objections, right? So if they go, well, look, the other agents offered me 1.5%, you're 2.5%, Danny, would you drop your fee? You've got to welcome that objection. And I think a lot of agents get offended and go, oh, what do you mean? You want the cheapest agent, etc. So look, thank you for the question. I understand how you feel. If I was in your shoes, I'd kind of feel like that might be a good deal for me. But after doing this for 20 years, here's what I know. And let me ask you this. Do you necessarily think that the best agents are the cheapest agents? Oh, well, no, not really, Danny. Okay, so what I'd like to suggest is that we focus on getting you the best price, because it's really about, getting you the result at the end of the day. So it's just welcoming it, being gentle about it. It's okay to ask those questions. Oh, look, this other agent's got a really high market share. I can understand how that might look like a safe choice for you, but I'd like to suggest we focus on who's going to get you the best price. And here's my strategy to do that. I remember hearing you talk about Amber Wershen years ago, where you had to do an interview with her, and John McGrath wanted you to ask her what dialogue did she say for to protect her fee, because she gets really good fees. And it came to the moment when you were recording her on Hot Topics, and you said, "Okay, well, Amber, here's the objection. Would you drop your fee?" And she said, "No. Did you have any other questions?" Right. So, because it was just a question, not an objection. So I love that simplicity, but don't get offended when they ask you, because if they do ask you to drop your fee or marketing or things, that's actually a good thing, Lee, because if they weren't interested in listing with you, they wouldn't ask.
So true. And Danny, our last one here is number 10. Take us into it.
Okay, so don't ask for the business, not closing. So there's a few different elements to this. One is believing your worth certainly helps. If you're going to go in there and you're just going to drop your fee, well, then they will work that out. They'll get that out of you, and you'll panic and drop it. The other is that you can start by closing. By the way, if what I say makes sense today, and you're comfortable with the changeover costs and the marketing and us working with you, and only if you're comfortable, would you be ready to move forward tonight? Only if you're comfortable. Right, so I get out straight away whether they're open to being closed tonight. And go, well, yeah, if it makes sense, I suppose we could. So what that helps me then at the end is that then I can summarize and I can go, okay, so you're happy with the marketing plan. You picked, the silver campaign. So we've locked that one in. You're comfortable with that. You're comfortable with the start times, et cetera, et cetera. We're going through all the different elements. So I'm getting yes, 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 yes. My fees are 2.5%. Well, look, I'd love to get started. All we need to do from here is sign our agreement. Is that okay? Now, sometimes that's a lot easier for them to go, yeah, well, let's just get started. That's a fairly gentle close. A lot of people are going to say, well, look, can I just think it over? And some people generally do need to think it over. But you've got to kind of dig a little bit and go, well, look, I know when I'm making a big decision and I say I want to think something over, there's something maybe I'm not quite sure of. Look, elephant in the room, I'm happy to chat about it. Is there something that you're not quite comfortable with? Well, look here, Danny, it's the fees. The other agents have offered a lower fee, et cetera. And you say, well, look, fees aside, if we can kind of, work that out, would you be happy to move forward? Oh, well, look, the marketing is a little bit expensive as well compared to the other. So look, marketing and fees aside, would you be happy to move forward? Well, actually, with Danny, we don't like you. Well, if I got somebody else to come to the open house, would that be okay? At some point, you're not going to get it with fees aside. But there's no point trying to close if it's not going to go with you anyway. So you need to establish, okay, if you're happy with me besides the fee, well, then I can go in and talk about my value of fee. I can give a justification. I can go through some different dialogues of matching, Why don't you think the other agents choose to match my fee? Because to match my fee, they'd have to match my results and my service. So the only thing they can offer you is a cheaper fee. There's lots of different little ways. Quote paid close, I learnt from you, Lee. That still works today. I have some clients that go, I hate closing. And I go, well, look, just get to the end and go, well, look, no matter what agent you go through, you need to sign an agreement. Let me explain the law of selling to you. And then that's a closing technique. We agreed on this. To activate our services, all you need to do is sign here. That can work sometimes. If you can't close it on the spot, then you need to be able to close it then the next day. Is it okay if I give you a call tomorrow morning? Is that all right? So establish your next point of contact. But here's the key in all this. We think it's awkward closing, but the client expects you're going to close, right? They may not want you to close, but they know it's going to come. And even though they might be semi-relieved that it didn't come and you didn't close, they're going to go, he or she didn't close. Are they going to be able to close my buyer? So it's your duty to close, and it's what you do as a salesperson. You've got to get around that awkwardness.
Very powerful. And I love this part of the whole profession of selling, of delivering in a natural way, an okay way for them to say yes and not feel trapped. And Danny, your tone and tonality is perfect for what number 10 is all about. And today's been an amazing program, one that everyone will be going through many times, one of those golden moments. But Danny Grant, excellent. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to you being back on the program in the future.
It's been a pleasure. I'd love to. Thanks, Lee.